So let us come to order. And next on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next is the roll call, and I believe we are all here. Do we need anything further on the roll call?
No.
Okay, I didn't think so.
Can I say something? You have a new member.
Yes, yes, indeed. Let us introduce our new member. Welcome. We're happy to have you join the commission. Very good, good. And maybe we should ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself, like an elevator speech introduction.
Sure,
Good.
I was born in Toronto, Canada. I moved to Calabasas in the year 2012. I went through all the elementary, middle, high school, Laurel, Estelle, and Calabasas High. And now I'm graduating from CSUN with a bachelor's in history.
Is your
Wonderful.
microphone on, by the way?
Great. And why
Okay,
don't we
great.
do a short introduction from the other four of us for you?
Okay, thank
Good.
you.
Hello, my name is Mark Silverman. Been on the commission, I think it's maybe 6 years. I'm not sure. Love what I'm doing here and happy to be here, and good evening to everybody.
Good. Carol.
Carol Steffen. I've been on the commission for about the same time. I've lost track also. I love living in Calabasas, and I love being a part of making Calabasas work. So the Historic Preservation Commission is a great place to participate.
Good.
Hi, I'm Justin Ford. I've been on the commission maybe 4 or 5 years now, I think, maybe 3, something like that. I've lived in Calabasas since 2010 and am a biotechnology consultant.
And I'm Michael Heumann, and I'm the next newest member to the commission, a couple of years. I've lived in Calabasas for a few years, going back to 1989. It adds up after a while. And it's a wonderful city. We moved in just before it became a city, and we've absolutely enjoyed everything about the city ever since.
Well, it's nice to meet all of you. Thank you.
Yeah, well,
Welcome, yes,
Thank you.
welcome. Okay, do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I motion that we approve the agenda.
I'll second it.
Okay, those in favor?
Justin
And,
moved, right?
I think we've done introductions.
Mark.
Do we have any announcements? Hearing none, let's move on to public comments. Do we have any public comments? I see none in the room, but are there any on the television link or whatever we would call it?
There are none.
Very good. So, in the consent calendar, I don't, other than, I guess the only thing on the consent calendar is the minutes.
Yep.
Yes. Do we have any discussion or corrections or motion to approve the minutes?
Well, I was absent that meeting, so I don't think I should do
Yes.
that.
Right.
I have no comments on the minutes. They look good to me, so.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, minutes look great.
Okay, so may I consider them a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Mark.
And I second that.
Okay, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good. Yes.
That's a
Can
3-0, because obviously neither one of you two could,
Yeah.
yeah, great,
I meant
thank
to
you.
I meant to say that the Calabasas Earth Day celebration is April 12th. So that's coming up in what, just a couple, 3 weeks. So that's a really cool event to like meet the different community groups as well as, you know, city folks that show up there and, you know, other organizations that are related to Earth activities and such. So it's held by Albertson's kind of Sharkeys area in the creek bed there. And it's not actually in the creek bed, but kind of in the parking area. They block off some area there, and it's a really, really cool event, so.
What's the name of the event, please?
The Calabasas Earth Day celebration.
Earth Day.
Yeah.
Yep, our Department of Public Works puts that on, and there's a stream restoration project that was accomplished through their Environmental Services Division some years ago with much success in terms of the habitat refurbishment down in that area. And that's where they have this celebration every year.
Can I add one more thing? Tom, your assistant here is not Joel today. We should have her introduced too, don't you think?
Yes,
Yes.
I'd hoped to introduce too.
Oh.
I thought we somehow blasted through announcements and introductions, but we're back at it. So next to me is Rachel Zadikoff. Rachel is our assistant planner, and she helps with everything under the sun that we do. Planning Commission presentations and council and research of all sorts, projects, everything from sign permits to conditional use permits. She's an all-purpose planner. That's why we hired her. And since Joel couldn't be here, I made her come.
Nice to meet you all.
Right on. Welcome, Rachel.
Yes.
She's just better than whatever I say, let's put it that way. So Joel is going to be out for a couple weeks. Good things, nothing, but he couldn't be here tonight. If we have some follow-ups, anything, and you can't reach me, feel free to contact Rachel while he's out. I don't imagine anything's going to be pressing, but okay. I always like to have somebody backing up. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. And next, we have discussion number 2, 2024 Certified Local Government Report to the California State Historic Preservation Office. Tom, do you have a report on that?
I just want to, the report is entirely what's before you in writing and what was already distributed. It's not the kind of thing that lends itself to a exciting PowerPoint presentation, and so I thought I'd save everybody from that. But I'll just say that we do this every year as a certified local government that was created with a lot of effort with the writing of our code, establishment of the commission, establishment of the procedures, and maintaining training regimen and all those things. We are acting in a capacity that comes from the state and the State Office of Historic Preservation and under the federal law to be able to do the kind of things we do as a local government. You can't just do it willy-nilly. And as you all know, because I've given you a presentation on that, that's why we also then have to furnish an annual report. So the report that was distributed to you is this year, the report for the previous year. It's done on a fiscal year that begins October 1, ends September 30. Federal fiscal, because this really all stems from the federal law. So that's why it's a little odd. The state fiscal year is July 1 to June 30, so, which is also the cities. So it's a little unusual. If you ever wondered why do we do this when we do it, it's because it's the feds. And the report deadlines seem to be about the same time as tax deadline. So there you go. So this is the report we've prepared. It basically documents who's on the commission, what their qualifications are. The state finally got to the point where they decided they didn't need everybody's resumes coming back in every year. So if it's a reappointed commissioner, we don't have to resend their resume. So we can, right? If there's significant changes, by all means, let us know. We'll update it and send it in. But this is just perfunctory. Obviously, if we had designated any new landmarks, that would be in this report. And some of you may be thinking, well, didn't we do a landmark? Yes, we did. But we did it after October 1, so that'll be in the next year's report. Okay, so if you have any questions about the report, and it's how it's a format that basically corresponds with what the state expects as well. So I can't defend the format so much. But if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Tom, I reviewed it. It looked fine to me. We'll see if any of the other commissioners have any questions.
I read all 42 pages of it. It was great.
Yes. Good for you, good.
And this
Yes.
actually reminded me to take the classes, which I've done.
Good,
Well, we were hoping that would do that.
good. Very good. Do we
Then it
need
served
to-
one purpose already.
Yes. Do we need to adopt this in any way by a motion?
All you need to do is as a motion, deem it as having been presented, accepted, and ask us to file it and send it in, which we're doing anyway. In fact, I think I had Joel send it in today already.
May we have a motion to that effect?
I move to that effect.
Good. Second?
I second to the same effect.
Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is some real substance here for us. Discussion of the Park Moderne Pump House. Tom?
Okay, well, this is a little more fun, juicier, stranger, all those things than what you just were talking about. It's like the exact opposite. It's a report to the state. So the Park Moderne Pump House, this is it in its sunny glory on a day, I don't know when, but this wasn't the day I went and saw it, but it looks that way today, and it's looked that way 20 years ago. This building's just been sitting there in the same state for decades. So we know what it is. You can drive past it. You can see it. If you blink while you're driving, you might not see it. It's not very large, and I'll get to that in a minute. But it's definitely a part of one of the earliest tracks for housing development in the city, which is the Park Moderne track. Now, this map that I'm showing here appears to be sideways. In printed form it is, but in geographic, cartographic, by that standard, it's right side up, because there's the north arrow. And I did that so that you all can kind of interpret it correctly, because here's Old Topanga Canyon Road right here, which runs north-south through there. So I didn't want anybody to be confused when you're looking at this, that that's what's here. And just off of this, to the south would be Calabasas High School, Arvin. Okay, so that's where you went to high school, right down there. This is your neighbor. All right, so that's what you're looking at here. It was 174 lots, although there's some debate as to whether there was 174 or 177. The exact total number of lots could change. I'll point out that if you looked up this area right here, which is near the pump house, actually, this area right here, I'm sorry, I keep looking up. And the pump house is right in this area here, but the lots changed in this because that particular segment of street was vacated some years ago. And these lots were actually expanded to go down into the school property a little bit. So there have been some changes, and so the number of lots is not 174 today, that's for sure. But that's what it started out at. It's affectionately known, this area is the bird streets, the bird track, because of the streets that are all named after Morning Dove, Blackbird Way, et cetera. And so you will find all of these on that, although Phoebe Lane, I believe, may have been renamed to like Spring Hollow or some other name. I couldn't find it on a current map. That's this one right here. So, but all the other names are still intact. Very narrow streets, no street lights, no curb and gutter. This was just like the Calabasas Highlands and so many other post-World War I housing tracts in the suburbs at a time the automobile was becoming commonplace for the middle class. And so this is a good indicator, this subdivision, of what was going on in the whole region and nationally in terms of urban development. This particular tract was unique because it was intended to be an artist retreat type of place. The developer had that intent. They had designs already anticipated for Park Moderne, and this was a drawing done for a prototype house. You can see it's influenced heavily by Frank Lloyd Wright and others of that era, with very modern, clean, rectangular lines and forms. And so this was a prototype sketch. And if you look carefully, you got Jacques Peters here indicated, but also you've got a partner of his at that time, who is William F. Ruck. That's what this is, W.F. Ruck. He was the architect. Peters was a designer, maybe an architect some of the time, but at least in 1928, Ruck and Peters, comma, Associated Designer and Architect, was based out of Los Angeles, and Ruck was the architect. So I want to give credit to both individuals. They apparently partnered on this effort and on other aspects of Park Moderne. So this was one of the type of housing they were trying to do. You can imagine 1928, everything's going gangbusters, real estate, and Southern California, what could be better? Then you get the Great Depression, you know, the much stock. So everything dried up before it could really even get started. So that's in a nutshell what happened with Park Moderne, but it did get a start. You know, the layout was there, the map was recorded, and you had some infrastructure in place, which included the fountain and the bird path, right? And we've got 2 landmarks locally designated for that. And so there was some housing that did happen, but very little. And you had the infrastructure I point out, which included the pump house. Now, how many here have seen this image of the pump house before? In a book somewhere, any? Yes? Everybody? Probably, right? Problem is, it doesn't look like that, does it?
No.
No? So which is the real pump house? Well, that's partly what we're now struggling to determine, and I'm inviting the commissioners to help. So as we started researching this, and certainly after taking a real good look at this, and I'll show you some other photos shortly, Joel and I came to these pretty simple conclusions. There's only one image that we've been able to find in literature of the, quote, pump house, and it's the one I just showed you that was on the left with the 3 circular windows. The one that you see today is consistent in terms of the style of architecture. It's Art Deco, but you can see it's very different. I'll go up. Very different. You have a very vertical orientation and emphasis on the building on the left, and you've got almost more horizontal. You've got a juxtaposition of horizontal lines and surfaces with the vertical on the corners, and that's on a square structure, whereas the one to the left is taller than it is wide. So very different, and you have a little more detail on the one on the left than ever was accomplished on the one on the right. Shows you how you can have the same architectural style and still be very different. Even when the purpose is the same. They're both simply pump houses. So it's in very poor condition, that structure today, but looking at the construction methods, it's consistent with what you would expect from that time period. It's consistent with what we'd see in the Masson House, for example, although a little more contemporary than that. And I owned a house, my first house was built in 1928, and I felt like I was looking at my basement in that house when I was looking inside there. So it's about 100 years old, certainly looks like it's been through 100 years of wear and tear, but it's obviously not the same building. We could not find any concrete proof that the photographed structure was actually located in Park Moderne. We haven't seen any reference to that. There's no map that says pump house number 1 and this one being number 2, for example. But that could have happened. We're not seeing anything to the contrary of that either. So it's possible, I could surmise, that both existed. We just don't know for sure, and kind of doubt it because I don't know of any remains of the other one. Anyway, so talking about other photos and taking a good look at it. This is the front. It just has one doorway in, And the side just has vents at the top, and then the back had a window here. I'm sorry, I keep looking at the wrong one. The side just has a vent up top. The front had a small door. You have to actually stoop to go through that. It's a very small building, and then this was a side window. This oak tree came along and decided to hug the building, and it's just slowly gonna push it over. We're guessing 80, 90 years old. It came along shortly after the pump house did, and it's faring better than the pump house. But it's not precedent to the pump house. We do not think it was there first.
Can I ask a question? So, pump house, I assume it, oops, sorry. I assume it pumped water,
Yes,
and I think I told you I went and I wanted to see where it was and see it. I went yesterday and took a quick look. There's something inside of it that looks like a big cylinder or something, so would that be where
does it look like that?
Could be, I didn't go, if there was a fence, I couldn't go up to it. Yes, I think so.
Yes, so what was envisioned, of course, there was no water district. There was not a public water supply available. And individual homes, including, for example, the Masson House just up the street, up Mulholland, had its own well. Right, and that was typical. And you drill till you get water you could rely on that was clean enough, and that you had your well. Much, obviously, has happened with water rights in this state since early 1900s. In this case, what they decided to do is, instead of individual homes drilling their own wells, 170 some odd wells, they created a communal well approach, and that's what this was intended to do. More than likely, they were not gonna rely on just this one for the whole place. They probably did just the one for what they were starting and may have planned on doing others later. We just don't know. But it wasn't huge. The water pressure tank that's right there is about the same size as the one I had in my house in Indiana for just my house. But you had a lot less going on in a house of that era and of the sizes you had there. You had running water in 1.5 bathrooms, not 4 or 3.5 even, or whatever. So it still has that tank. It does not have the electric pump. I couldn't find really any electric wiring in there. The hole of the well itself is still there, very dangerously so. It's not covered. We advised the owner they probably will want to cover that as a safeguard for what could be a hazard for somebody somewhere, sometime. Well, not somewhere there, but
Yeah.
so the owner said that they would take care of that. So other little tidbit here, let's see. I said it's small. These are the dimensions that we measured in the field. The doorway's less than 6 feet tall, for example. I mean, the building itself is not even 8 feet tall. This is just a very simple box of a building that housed a pump and a water pressure facility, to be able to get water to more than one house, right? It was some sort of shared infrastructure. How many houses it ultimately supplied, we don't know, right? And obviously it was rendered obsolete pretty quickly once you had a water district. But it really wasn't needed even for the several years before that, because you had no development happening. You had a depression and a major war.
So, Tom, so the one on the left in your comparison picture, the one with the circles and stuff on the side, the circular windows, do these look like, you said they look similar in time period. Could the one on the left have been like somewhere later in the development of that community and just still called the Park Modern Pump House, but maybe not been right next to it, just somewhere, and then demolished at some point?
That's possible. I mean, that's why I say it could be that. I was just talking to Joel this morning saying, for all we know, the one that's the larger, more architecturally fancy, if you will, one might have been the pump house number one, main pump, and the other one ancillary.
Okay.
It also could be that, well, I've got some theories I was gonna go through. You got to that a little bit ahead of me. So, possible explanations, right? So, it could have been one of two or more pump house structures originally designed, and with only one, not having been photographed and not documented in any old photos that we can find anywhere, right? Surviving. So that's possible. We don't think so. This one is definitely one that's been there, what appears to be for the whole duration. It seems unusual to me that you would have had your second pump house also built and functioning before you could really even get your project off the ground because of the depression. So, but that other one was built. It's in a photo. It's not a photo sim. They weren't doing photo sims in 1926, 7, 8. So we know it was built. So then we get to possibility number two. It could also have been constructed but later modified to what we see today. One could argue that. I don't think that's likely because the proportions are so different that the only way that would happen is if the original one was completely destroyed and rebuilt in this new design. And I have a hard time believing that, again, also because it's a utilitarian type structure that probably, anyway, it's unlikely. Not gonna rule it out, that's why it's on the slide. But the third option is probably the most plausible, and that is that the one we see archived in photos has just been misappropriated to here. The developer, Lingenbrink, wasn't doing just this project at that time. He had residential subdivisions going on in several locations at that time. And when you recall the how fashionable and popular Art Deco was, and everything was so auto-centric, especially in this part of the country, that to have a drivable Art Deco styled neighborhood, that was what he focused on. That's what they were doing, and it wasn't just here. So it could be that that image came from a pump house from a different place. So we're going to be looking into that. And these other subdivisions, just like here, were away from existing urban cores. They did not have water. So wherever you were going, you were going to supply it with water. You were going to create your own little utility. So you knew that they were doing these pump houses in other places as well. So what we're hoping to do is to find some more information on other developments done by this developer, especially those that would include the same architecture, same architects, Peters and Ruck. So that's something on our to-do list. I can tell you that Councilmember Bazagian, who's a huge historic preservation fan and historian generally, is very interested in this, and he and I have had several conversations, and he's done a fair amount of his own research. Excellent help, too, I have to say, including that he's planning on going up to, I think it's UC Santa Barbara, where they have an archive up there, and he's going to pour over some documents they have there to see if there might be some clues. And he's planning on doing that in the next several weeks. If anybody is interested in maybe making that trip, he's going to do it on train out of maybe Moore Park. I don't know where he's going to depart from, but go up to Santa Barbara on the train to do it. And I'm sure he'd welcome a call if any of you thought, hey, I'd like to go too. But that's up to you guys. I know I can't make it for that, but I can't wait to see what he finds out.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's going to take, looking out for little pearls we can string together to figure some of this out, perhaps. But for right now, that's what we know. I can tell you that the pump house is in terrible shape, unfortunately, but not irretrievably so. You could do a restoration on it and you'd have what was there. But I'd like to know, if you're gonna do that, what you're restoring.
Right.
Are you for sure restoring the one and only pump house? Are you restoring the number 2 pump house? Are you restoring a reconstructed pump house that used to look like that? We'd like to get some answers before we move on with whether we should designate it, what to designate it as. So we've got to get more information.
So Tom, you've spoken with the property owner, I assume?
Yes,
And are
you guys keep getting ahead of me.
oh,
You do a good job of it. I applaud you for that. So in this image, you can see the property owner. Her name is Lucy. Very, very helpful. Her family's owned this property since 1971. And the pump house was an old decrepit building when they bought it in 1971. It's sat there in the same way since then. So she's seen it for half its life herself on her own property, which I think is pretty amazing. She's not, she has no problems with trying to, looking into designating it. She's supportive of that. We don't have anything official. We just know that she helped us by letting us take a good look around. More than helpful. And we're gonna follow up with her some more. We're interested about the property. There's some, as I mentioned in my sort of intro stuff, there are some lots that changed to the west, and we're curious to get some more information about that too, and so we might learn some more from her. So we're going to arrange for another meeting with her and hopefully take another look at the pump house, but I'm gonna try to take a broader look at the property as well, with the idea of trying to figure out, is this the one and only pump house? Try to see if there are any clues. One thing to know in terms of the area geography, and I'll go up to the track map to show you. So the creek that runs through from Headwaters Corner is a north-running creek toward the valley, and it runs basically along the lines of Old Topanga Canyon Road here. So, Old Topanga Canyon Road, the historic portion, is running down in the valley bottom along a creek. Well, that continued. That's still the case here. It's just that a lot of that creek has been culverted and undergrounded. But this is definitely a low area through here. And when you have periods of a lot of heavy rain, this area is basically a giant wet sponge. It's just the water table's right at the surface, basically. So this area in here, and the pump house, as we know, is right here. This is all very low down in here. And it works its way higher as you go east. So if there was another well, it'd have to be in this same area. That's where the water table would have been the most reliable. You wouldn't have put it in the eastern or northern sections. So anything I can learn about this, this right-of-way that was right there that was vacated later, that's kind of interesting. It's, for them to put the well house on its own lot, they could have, would have. They had 174. But they might have also not wanted it to take up a lot. So that's another thing. I want to look for where there could have been a nook or crook where you would have had it. But it'd have to make sense from a location standpoint. So we're going to try to do a little detective work and see if there's anything that gives us a clue. But right now, those are our theories. I'm open to other thoughts. And
Tom,
if you don't
I
have
have
to have it now, you could have it 2 weeks from now and you call me. I don't care.
I have a number of comments and a number of questions.
Okay?
And it all relates more and less to some degree to the pump house. But first, having lived in the Bird Streets, but outside the Parc Moderne on Rencrest, which is right outside, for 35 years, and I've talked to many people who were living there before we moved in. This pump house on the left in the photo with the 3 windows, I've never been able to find anybody who could say they ever saw it, even years before we moved in 1989. And I've walked all the Bird Streets, probably hundreds of times because that's where we take our walks. And we've never seen anything that ever looks at all like this pump house. So it's either hidden or gone. Now, as I look at the photograph, it's possible that I can make out a house in the background behind it and to the right. And it's even possible, but I'm not sure if what I'm really seeing, it's possible there's a car parked behind it. Obviously, there's a wire fence in front of it, but, and there are trees that are probably very different now. They're trees of a different era. But, you know, if that pump house was ever in Parc Moderne, there's, you know, I certainly have never found any word of it and certainly never seen it. And now going to, towards the pump house that is there, one thing I've noted is that there are a number of homes that go back to the original Parc Moderne, going up Blackbird especially. And, and if one decides to do a deeper dive, one could look at building permits and go back and find when they were built. But if you just look at Zillow and look at Zillow and you know, put in various of the addresses of homes that look old, some of them go back to 1928, 1932. They're fairly, you know, you can, you know, how accurate Zillow is, who knows? But you know, assuming that maybe is accurate, there are probably 4 or 5 houses that I thought looked like they went back to original Parc Moderne, and when I looked at Zillow, they all were 1920s or 1930s. There's the clubhouse. Right as you get to the top of Blackbird, there are a couple homes that look like the old ones. One of them even looks a bit like the sketch of the architect sketch that you showed. But then you go down the hill to where this pump house is, the one that's still there, and you've talked to the property owner. Right now, the property looks vacant. It looks between occupants. I don't know for sure that that's the case, but for some months it was like there were leaves on a car that was there, and it looked abandoned. Then it got cleaned up, and it's looked a lot better in the last few months. But that is also the home where a horse used to live back when we moved in. That horse was named Nugget. And Nugget lived there for several years, you know, maybe to the mid-90s, and then I think Nugget died of old age. And probably Nugget is the last horse to live in the Parc Moderne area. And Nugget lived in a little stable to the left of the house as you look at it on the street. And the pump house is over on what looks to be a separate lot to the right. Now, when you look at the pump house itself, and you've been there, and I've also been there and actually walked in and looked at it, that oak tree has already pushed in the back left corner of the pump house, maybe about 6 inches. It's collapsed the corner of the pump house. And it has the crack you can see in the front of it in the photograph over the doorway. One of 2 things is not going to survive much longer, either the oak tree or the pump house. And when I say that, the oak tree, if it's 90 years old or even 60 years old, you know, we have our oak tree ordinance. We're probably not going to take down the oak tree. But the pump house is so small that it probably could be moved. I mean, people move entire houses sometimes. You know, the plumber house down at the Onisinobe was moved there from North Hollywood or something. And that's obviously a huge, much, much bigger. The pump house, you described its dimensions, it could be moved over about 10 feet and saved from the oak tree. Obviously, that requires some capital, and it's probably a dream to hope it would happen, but given, you know, the budget and what we know about the budget for the Mason house, it's literally, other than that one fountain that has the fuses built into it at the top of the bird path, it's the only other thing that really screams out that this is from Parc Moderne. The houses, some of them look pretty much from that era. Some of them have been remodeled. For example, the old clubhouse is so remodeled that James Bazazian told me that they don't really focus on it because it's too remodeled. So this is really, other than that one sort of obelisk type of thing with the fuses built into it at the top of the bird path, this is the only really visually obvious thing left from Parc Moderne. So, and again, it's probably a fantasy, and I wish I could have a lot of hope it would happen, but I would recommend that we at least explore whether it could be moved over 10 feet or even 6 or 8 feet and rehabbed a bit, conserved a bit, and it might last another 100 years.
You have other questions or comments right now,
think
Mr. Chair?
That's most of it. I've been looking into a lot of the history of Parc Moderne, but I've touched on some of it. I think it would be really interesting historically to go back and comprehensively look at the building permits for all the properties that look like they might have been original. There's one down at the bottom of the street that just before you start going up the rise on Blackbird, that was once occupied by an artist. I heard about that. The current owner found a stone sculpture when he was digging in his garden. That
I
is
didn't
a-
hear what he found, I'm
He
sorry.
found a stone sculpture, a sculpture of the head of a woman, and it's maybe about 2 by 3 feet, and it's propped up right in front of his front door now. You can see it from the street. It's a good work of art. And, you know, so, but there are sort of, you have to dig pretty deep to find things you can actually see that relate to the original Parc Moderne.
Well, I think I've mentioned this before. And I couldn't find it in my very short visit to the pump house. There's an old house with grass on it that I think I mentioned before. I'd have to go find it. But it's probably the oldest house in that area. I'll go look for it again. But I
Good.
think that there was a discussion about that person does not want their home to become, you know, part of a historic landmark for Calabasas.
Yes.
If I may.
And just one more
Yeah,
thing,
no
then I'll
worries.
turn to you. 2 of the houses near the top of Blackbird were designed by Schindler. But yes,
I was just going to mention, as you very eloquently mentioned, on Blackbird, there are a few homes that are, I believe, original to the Parc Moderne era. And
Yes.
once I was walking and I happened to talk to one of the owners, and he mentioned that he is an original owner, not he himself, but it's been in his family since it
Wow.
was built
wow,
in the 1920s.
yes.
So I think, I don't know exactly their address, but I think that would be a very good contact because they might have some family archives of sorts of what was
Good.
there.
And they
Or a
might be able
deed
to,
or
Well,
something
it's
that we
not,
could.
maybe what you could do is share your information, if it's anything in terms of the exact location that you think you could pinpoint with us, and we'll try to track
We
it
can
down.
look at a map and I can
Good.
I don't
try to
wanna-
guess where it was.
How long ago did you talk?
This was probably less than a year ago.
Oh, good.
Wow.
As I
Wonderful.
mentioned, I have family that lives on Hummingbird, so
Yes,
we were just walking around as we usually do, and he was outside, and I got a chance to speak to him, and he was
Oh,
telling me
that's
very
pretty
interesting
cool.
stories about the area, so.
good.
they might
That's-
have information on the
Yes.
pump house.
And they might, I think, to my knowledge, they're the only original owners of any of those properties left. And there are only a few of the original kind. I mean, most of Hummingbird, Bluebird, and Meadow is all 1970s constructions.
Yes,
And most of, I think, the rest of Hummingbird that meets Meadowlark is like 50s and 60s homes.
right.
Like the L-shaped, like they call them like the post-war production.
Right, even the house that is, where the pump house is located and where Nugget used to live, if you look at Zillow, that one is different. That one has a build date of something like 56 or something.
Yep.
It seems too new, although it could be right. But I talked to James Bazazian and about that, and he thought maybe that was wrong information on Zillow. But all of this, I think if you go back to building permits, you can
Okay,
chase a lot of this down.
Yeah.
What I'd like to do, if you don't mind, before we go to another commissioner, is address some of your remarks, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
All right, first, can the pump house be moved? Obviously, it could. Like you say, a lot of things have been moved. Ironically, there's a building that was built in 1934, just up, I think it's on Blackbird, and it actually was from Encino and moved into this neighborhood.
Yes.
So it's an old building. It has some interesting architecture and some interesting windows, but it's not in its original location. It does not have its original context because it was part of basically a collection of structures that were all part of one estate. And since that building is, I'm being nebulous for a reason. It's not on our agenda, but to keep it relevant, I'm going to keep it general, which is if you have changes to something, that will affect the integrity of the resource.
Sure.
One of the biggest things you can do that will affect it negatively is relocate it. And if you can avoid relocating it, that is rule number one. So it's rare that you would say, oak tree, you've got to get out of my way. But more than likely, in this case, if we were going to try to reconstruct this resource and bring it back to what it was, you're going to have to remove the oak tree. Because you want your pump house where the well is, right there. That's where it was. So I just want to make that point. It doesn't mean we couldn't end up going that direction eventually if we have good reason to do it. But I'd be a little hard pressed at first glance to think we would do anything but save the pump house and maybe relocate the oak tree or mitigate for the loss of the oak tree. There are certain ways you could do that. You can't mitigate for, as you pointed out, how are you going to mitigate for the loss of the structure if you lose the structure? Best you could do is relocate it. But from a historic preservation protocol standpoint, you really want to avoid doing that.
And if I may, the oak tree, when you say 90 years, maybe it is, but there was an oak tree just catty-corner behind our house that was sawed down within the last month that was 20 times the size of that oak tree that is by the pump house. And that oak tree, at its base, it was about, I would estimate 12 feet. I got a slab from the 15-foot level that is 3 feet in diameter, 15 feet up
That's
in the
crazy.
air, of a branch, not of the main tree. And that slab from the branch is greater in diameter than that oak tree by the pump house. And it's such a loss that that tree went, but it was looming over a house, and they thought it was rotten at the core. When it was cut down, actually, it looked like the trunk was pretty good. But you know, the other thing, very frankly, I'd rather save the pump house than that one oak tree. And I love oak trees. I've actually planted 3 in our front yard that are, but I'd rather save those and let this one go to save the pump house.
But you can see why having as much good information as we can is going to help make it what would be eventually a difficult decision. So we're going to do more digging before this really becomes a matter for serious consideration. And I invite all kinds of great information to help us with this detective work. The second point I wanted to make, and you mentioned building permit research. That's absolutely on our list as well. You're right on target. That's going to help. We already did the research for the building permit history of this property. There are no permits of record of any kind for the pump house itself. And the earliest record for the house on that property is for home addition work in the 50s.
Addition.
Now notice, I said the earliest permit record we have is for additions.
Yes.
We don't have anything earlier than that. We don't even have any records of the original permit for the original house.
Yes.
So that means we don't know when the original dwelling was built. The supposition has always been by the current owner and by others that it was built in the 50s. And they may be right. But we're going to do what we can to see if that's true or if it may be even older than that, and that the, quote, 1950 structure might be a modified version of an earlier structure. So because the well is on that property, we are really interested in trying to figure out if something might have been built there earlier. And that would also help confirm the pump house, because it's pretty logical when you do infrastructure like this, you're gonna feed a building that's nearby. You're not going to build the pump house here and then transport your water, to a place 20 lots away. So chances are, there's at least one or several buildings that would have been part of the original project that are in close proximity to this pump house. And we want to try to find out if any of that remains anywhere. So that'll be our first area of research. The Anderson House and others are well documented already. And to do follow-up work on that, we know that's something we wanted to do. We talked to this commission about doing survey updates. And we're ended up doing it kind of piecemeal, one property at a time. So, but that's on our radar. We've got those in the inventory. But I can't wait to learn more. And so, Commissioner Firdaus, we can't wait to learn about your contact that you've had. We got locals who can just run into research by walking their dog. This is awesome.
Mhm.
All right, so those are my reactions to your questions, Chair Human. I love it. We got a lot going on. We've got Councilmember Bazagian doing research. We've got pedestrian researchers on our commission who are walking the neighborhood. Who knows what we're going to dig up? But
Right.
it is a mystery. We're going to try to figure it out before we really take any concrete steps. But who doesn't love a good mystery, right?
For sure. So are there original plans for other homes that we have? Or are they with like the County of Los Angeles, like for the original one?
Yeah.
So just kind of wanting to understand that a little bit.
That's a good question. Architectural plans to be on file in a planning office or a city hall for just somebody's house, extraordinarily rare. You can just imagine how full file rooms would be, because the plans were, of course, on paper and rolls of paper, and you'd hand the plans after they've been stamped and everything to the owner and say, enjoy your house, and the only thing on file is the building permit. That's pretty much still today what we do. Now, because of CAD and GIS and just electronic data generally, everything being saved, well, now we have plans, and we can have plans, and it'll probably become commonplace that we'll have some plans that we'd be able to devote, make copies of. We're just not an archive. No city could really devote its resources to be an archive of everybody's personal house. So I'm not expecting we're going to find plans in any archives, just the building permit. Did they get a permit? Was it just a plumbing permit? Were there structural permits from 1926? And by the way, the permits issued back then, you'd have this form usually that would say, is it a plumbing permit? You'd check the box, or what this permit, and you'd have one line you could put a description, and they'll put, hot water faucet or whatever it is. I mean, it's so cryptic and so shorthand that to try to really figure it out, and know that you've got the information to really answer your question. You may not, but we're going to give it our best shot. And our building official has been doing his job for a long time. He's seen every kind of building permit record you could imagine. He knows how to decipher stuff. So I'll consult with him too if I've got any really weird looking building permits. And we might be able to figure the shorthand out. But yeah, we're going to research that, try to find out. But it is interesting. You go in the books, and I don't care what book you find that talks about Park Modern. If it has a photograph, it probably has that pump house photo in it. And as far as we can tell, that's not it. So, but we'll get to it. We'll get to the bottom of it. Everybody should have gotten in front of you a copy of this document. This was produced by a member of our staff who worked for us some time ago, Jeff Starnes. He was our liaison to the HPC, probably for a good 10 years, I'd say. And he did some great work coming up with information like this. And this was when they hadn't yet decided on a logo, and so they had this temporary logo, so please don't get distracted by that. But there's a short bit on Park Moderne, and I will just point out that the drawing may be Jacques Peters, or it may have been really the work of his partner, we don't know. But it is attributed to Jacques Peters. Both names are on it, though. So, it'd be cool if we had that building there, wouldn't it?
Yes.
But we don't.
And the lofts were
It was,
$175 each. I'll take a few, yeah.
Exactly, yeah, yeah. Slightly more expensive than the territory of Alaska cost somebody decades before that. Yeah, it's amazing. So I'm open to other questions. I'm sorry I don't have a lot more fun. More solutions than questions. I think it's amazing. It's just continued to stand the test of time just sitting there. But it's at the point now where you point out, I think real correctly, Chair Human, that it probably can't just sit there a whole lot more. We're going to have to do something. So, well, we're taking the first steps.
I know we certainly appreciate the research you guys are doing, and it seems like a cool mystery to solve, and I know we're interested in preserving it, so appreciate your guys' efforts.
Thank you. Do we have anything else on the Park Moderne Pump House? Then let's move to the report from the Historic Preservation Officer.
Okay. I have a couple things to mention as my report. And the first is I unfortunately still have not had a chance to work on the oak trees for Old Town. We just have had other priorities. Let's see here. And then the fun thing I get to report is that only within the last, what is it now, month, the City Council approved the El Camino Real Bell
I thought I saw.
marker as landmark number 8. So we now have 8 local landmarks. They brought up some really good points, and we've got some follow-up work to do based on their input. And I'll probably invite the commissioners to help with this, but we now have to, as stewards of that, figure out, well, how are we going to take care of it in the best way? Now, this is a real simple object to take care of, but it does have more than one material. It has steel and it has iron, and it has its own characteristics, and you have a very classic question when you're taking care of an antique, if you will, which is, do you leave it as is with the patina, as I like to say, or do we restore it? And that question was asked by the council. At a minimum, you always want to do as little damage or no damage, basically. The other thing is, if there's anything that really shouldn't be there, get rid of it. Well, there is some things, whatever, maybe 30 years ago, whatever it was, somebody decided to put some signs on there to say this is the El Camino Real bell. But they put it right on the bell. And that's really not the best way to do it. So we're going to put an appropriate plaque. This will be language I'm going to run by this commission. We'll have it at the next meeting so that we can agree on what will be on the plaque. And it'll be a plaque like what's in front of our other landmarks, and we'll take the green signs off. Now, does it get refurbished and repainted? A little Rust-Oleum? What? So that'll be the other thing, is what do we do to take care of it? Do we just leave it there with its natural patina, which is, I think, what most of us probably would want to do? But we'll look over that information, discuss it with this group, and then have a path forward for that. And that sort of is a learning curve that helps us move in toward Masson House whenever we would get to that part. Now, that moves me to Masson House. I have, for now the second year of our CIP, the capital improvement program that has to be done as part of the budget process every year, I've asked to have the Masson House included. That means it's a mark on the wall. It's a way of recognizing in the monetary way that this is something we, as an asset, have to maintain and spend some money on. So it's out there. but there's no funding, so it's not shown with any dollar amount attributed to any given year. It's just shown as a cost, and eventually, and we have to do fundraising. So that remains on the to-do list, that if we find any opportunity where we might be able to bring dollars in that would help us rehab that building, please let us know. Call any of us. Call Rachel, call Joel, call me, call Michael, but say, hey, I just learned about this, or email us, obviously, whatever form of communication you want. And then we'll get on that. We're gonna, of course, look at it too. I do believe the city's looking into having some consultants that would help with having a better grants presence, and somebody who research grants and gets stuff for the city. Also doing maybe some lobbying at Sacramento. I'm not sure if they're putting those together, but to the extent we can get help with doing grant work, we're gonna take full advantage of that as well. So that's the deal with those. We have a report done, you got it, you approved it, or allowed me to turn it in, which I already did today. And I think we're good to go.
Well, just some reflections on grant opportunities. The city of LA would probably not be a very good idea right now, because we've just heard about a near $1 billion shortfall in the budget. And I wouldn't hold out a lot of hope for federal grants right now either. So it's probably the state or private foundations, if any grants are available. So are we, has that finished the report from?
That is my report, and I'm sticking to it.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Then we're to 5, which is reports from members of the Historic Preservation Commission. I have one, but I'm going to save it until I hear if any of the others of you have reports.
I don't.
Okay, I'll launch into mine. You may or may not have listened earlier in the meeting, but I referred to the Mason House, not the Masson House. Yes. Why did I do that?
Well, I'm curious now.
Yes. Well, it looks like Masson if you look at it phonetically. But if you were to talk to a gentleman named Gary Varney, he would say Mason House. Now, who is Gary Varney? Gary Varney lived in the Mason House, and I'm going with Mason. He lived there for 8 years in the 1950s. He grew up there. And I've been to the Mason House twice with him and with a few other people, including his wife Annie, and he is a remarkable source of information about the Mason House, including how he pronounces the name. And we probably will never know how the original MASSON people pronounced their name, but at least he had 8 years of experience 70 years ago with how it was pronounced back then. And he's a font of information about that property and other properties around. For example, the Wagon Wheel Ranch, and he used to have a good friend in his childhood who lived up there, and he'd go up there all the time. And he has stories about a small structure that used to be just behind where the gate is, going up the Wagon Wheel Ranch Road. And that small structure 30 or 35 years ago still stood. I don't know if it's there now, because I don't go behind the gate that's been put up. But that small structure also had a well that was open 30, 35 years ago. And you could look down into it and see it was 8 or 10 feet deep, and you didn't want to go in. But there's a lot of history there. Now, he tells stories about people who told him back in the 1950s that before the LA River was channelized, steelhead trout got all the way up to the Mason House. Wow. And you know what channelizing does is it destroys the year-round flow of some streams, because it sort of channelizes them, it just sort of drains out all the water. You know, we might have had a very, very different environment before channelization of the LA River, but he grew up hearing stories of people who once caught steelhead trout right up by the Mason House. Yes. And he remembered, there's a little dam behind the Mason House now. That was there when he was there. There is also a little cement culvert that is up by the road. He says if you dig out some dirt there, you'll find his brother's initials in the cement. And he would find artifacts, Chumash artifacts, or other artifacts there because there were several tribes in the area. One time he found half of a pestle, and a couple months later in the stream bed he found the other half and it fit together.
Wow.
Yes.
Does he still have it?
He thinks he may still have it. He thinks he may have given it to somebody else years ago, who I knew years ago, who was somebody very interested in archaeological things. But he's somebody that my sense is that we need to get an oral history from him about everything. I mean, and he also, there's a fireplace there that I had always speculated was the stone fireplace left from a burned down house that is sort of behind and a little bit upstream from the Mason house. That wasn't a fireplace, that was the incinerator. They incinerated everything that we would recycle today in the incinerator. And so he has stories about the other house that burned down in the fire, what, 8 or 10 years ago. But he's just, and my hope is to get him and his brother, who is older than him, there at the site and walk them through the site and just soak them for all the additional information. And he says his brother will remember more things than he does. So it's sort of, and he's in his late 70s and has Parkinson's. And so, but he's still very capable of walking the site and telling us about it. It's probably, this is another opportunity that unless we take it within months or a year or so, we may lose a chance at some incredible oral history about the Mason House. And if
Would
we're
he
gonna
mind if we recorded him?
I don't think he would mind, no. He seems very interested in reliving his childhood and sharing it. By the way, he is a fascinating guy. He was a beekeeper.
Huh.
And he was a beekeeper there,
At the Mason House?
yes.
Wow.
And also in a canyon up by Cornell, where his family also lived for a while. And his beekeeping goes back to the 1600s in prior generations of his family. Like they were just
Wow.
beekeepers, you know, for 300 years. And there came a time when keeping bees in this area, Calabasas area, didn't work as well because of pollutants. So they moved to somewhere like Colorado and kept bees there. Anyway, there's such a wealth of information that we could glean from Gary Varney.
So would this
So-
guy maybe have any funds he would like to donate to the restoration of the house? I'm just asking.
I do not think so.
Uh-huh.
He doesn't strike me as
Uh-huh.
having financial
Yeah.
resources.
Uh-huh.
If-
Well, Michael, as you were talking about, my brain went to the same place yours did about getting the oral history of
Yes.
this, walking. We're doing something similar at Malibu Creek State Park with the visitor center. So
Good.
one of the original inhabitants of the house is coming to give us a talk, and basically we're gonna walk the area. I mean, that's, you don't wanna lose that
No.
history, that firsthand knowledge of the place. And can you imagine when we restore this place, there's a video screen up with an interview of him.
Yes.
Telling about it's awesome. I mean, hopefully we can do that, you know, get an interview of him and his brother as well.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds awesome.
And they have some childhood pictures of the Mason house too. It's really, there's so much more to dig out. And
That would draw a lot more people even to come and visit it, to
Yes.
see what Calabasas was all about way back when, I think.
yes, and even it could help us get funding, whether that funding is from the city of Calabasas or from grants if we're able to do that. But, the fact that it's an old historic house about which we know only limited parts of its history is less interesting than if we know a whole lot more about its history in detail. And also, somewhere I picked up that there was a structure where the Mason House is, maybe not precisely where it sits, but there was a prior structure there, like a hunter's cabin or a hunter's house.
Before the house was built.
Yes, before the house was built.
Oh, that's
So again, it's a question of doing the research to dig all this out. But I'm in touch with Gary, and I can set up an opportunity for him and his brother to come and visit the Mason House and meet with us and be recorded.
That is very interesting. We'd love to be able to be introduced to one or both gentlemen and to be able to do some interviews. So I can follow up with you on the details, get names, numbers, whatever,
Good.
and we'll see if we can't set something up. I imagine having something on the premises to be able to do a little walk and talk would obviously be helpful. We might be able to get our communications crew to also do some videotaping so that that could be put together with some other information into an informational presentation that we could use for fundraising purposes and that sort of thing, but it also just is raw documentation, because to be able to mine somebody's memories, you can't do that all the time. You do it when you can, and then you get the benefit that and we just need to do that.
Well,
So
even-
hopefully we can do that, and
Good.
hopefully we'll do it in a series. That way we can get a lot of information and not, exhaust them trying to do it all at one shot.
Even before we meet with him there, I have pages of notes from things he said. And another good friend of mine from Topanga who knew him back in the 1950s and was there with us, she also has a bunch of notes. So what I'll do is I'll try to find some time in the next few weeks to organize and write up all the notes as a prelude to meeting with him and doing an,
Okay?
That would
I'll
help
just
us
ask
ask
if you do,
questions too.
yes.
if you do that, which I think would be awesome, and thank you in advance. I'm assuming you're gonna, of course, follow through on that promise, but if you do, please just send them to me,
Yes,
and I will share everything with the rest of the commission.
good,
Awesome.
very good.
It'll be informational at that point, and then in advance, and then we'll be able to have continued discussion at the next meeting.
Good.
Share what we've learned. And we'll have feedback from Councilmember Bazagian on the pump house. We'll have some good information. Great, thank you.
Very
I
good.
appreciate it.
Good. And then if we get back and work on the oak tree plaques too, we'll have a very full plate. Yes. So thank you. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, fellow commissioners. Does anybody else have any report or final comments or questions? Yes.
Just a comment. Tonight is the Persian New Year. It's going to be at 2 o'clock in the morning this year. And I wanted to wish everyone at home a happy Persian New Year and a happy Nowruz.
Thank you.
Same to you.
Thank
Same
you.
to you, yes.
Thank you.
Do we have to
Good.
get up at 2 to,
It's up to you, whatever you'd like to do at 2 in the morning. But I presume some families will be up and some will be asleep.
Yes. Will you be up?
Probably, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
good for you.
Thank you.
Good for you. Great. Well, thank you.
Speaking about the next meeting, when is the next meeting, do we know?
The next meeting is it's first meeting in July, normally when it would be. We have a meeting that's typically scheduled in April, but I believe the idea was this would take its place. We don't have any Old Town development items that I can think of right now. We have some code enforcement cases we're working on. Depending on how they go, one of them could result in an item for this body to review in their Old Town, with their Old Town hats on. But I can't be sure, so I'm not gonna mention any addresses. But if we have a development project, that sometimes includes a timeline, in which case we may have to have you meet sooner. because the state law requires us to review them on a certain timeline and to have a hearings on a timeline as well, so that things don't just get
Tom, if there-
bureaucratically vetoed, shall we say. You gotta do your job.
if there's any flexibility in the setting of the next meeting date, I'm going to be gone June 29th to July 11th.
Okay, why don't you,
Email you?
for anybody that wants to share your calendar preferences, send Liz Parker an email about any summer vacation plans. Please don't discuss them up here on the television, but let us know, and then we'll try to make sure that we schedule meetings and that won't conflict with vacation plans. I can't guarantee that we'll do that for everybody, because of course, everybody has their own plans, but we'll do our best.
So I have
Thank you.
one more thing. Going back to the condition of the belt, should we not talk to maybe somebody that understands the materials and whether or not it might be important to do a little maintenance on
Yeah.
it? Is it,
Yes,
okay.
good idea. Council had the same idea too. You guys think alike. Well, there are certainly experts in the field of historic preservation and the different metals you encounter for actual substance, whether it's cast iron or whatever, they know what to do. They understand that you have corrosion of different types and how to better address it in a way that's sensitive to the historic relevance. So there are some features that they'll have very specific. If you look at the report that was done for the Mason House, that has some very specific recommendations for certain things, even just for the plumbing fixtures. And that's one of the reasons, because you'll have, you might have lead in the pipes, and so they're gonna have suggestions on how to address that. You may have to leave the pipes there, but you can't use them, so you end up having to just leave them in place and create a redundant set of pipes for use. But you don't tear out the walls to remove the lead pipes. I mean, that kind of thing. So we'll for sure consult with an expert on what to do with that. We want to
Just-
do it right, for sure.
Just for a moment, back to the Mason House, and Gary will tell us more about this, and my write-up of the notes will cover it. But there are some other wonderful things, such as even in the 1950s, he and his brother shared a particular bedroom, sort of to the front and left side of the house. And there was an occasion where he got up and stood up and fell through the floorboards. So the house was not in great condition even then.
Well, that was
And-
the original portion.
Yes, pardon me?
That was part of the original house from
Probably.
1903, that room.
And they added an addition, and he can go through, what's original and what was added and all the, what his mother was doing and so on. Also, something I learned interesting about the Mason House, there is somebody living under the house that is tolerated by the tree people who are there now. It is a rattlesnake, lives under the house, and the rattlesnake doesn't bother them, and they don't bother it.
I'm glad it's there and not at my house.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
so staff is done with our reports. I've given you all the information I know for now, and I leave it to the chair and fellow members to decide if you are ready to adjourn.
Are we ready?
I make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
I'll second it.
Okay, we may all vote yes by standing up.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you all very much.